Welcome back to the Children First Family Law Podcast. I'm your host, Krista Nash, and today you're getting me solo. If you're listening to this episode right before the new year, thank you for spending this time with me. But if it's not right before the new year or even right after the new year and the turn of the calendar, I hope you'll listen anyway, because the principles we will discuss are good tips for co-parenting, whether they are New Year's resolutions or resolutions done any time of the year. I want to start by acknowledging something right out of the gate, and that is that if you are a divorced or divorcing parent or someone breaking up from the co-parent, even if you've never been married, the holidays and the new year can be, let's just say, complicated. There is a lot of pressure, a lot of emotion, a lot of reflection about what went wrong, what you wish were different, and what you hope might somehow be better next year. And every January, people talk about resolutions like losing weight, exercising more, getting off social media so much. But today we're talking about New Year's resolutions that actually truly matter for children of parents who are not together, whether that's through divorce or some other breakup of the family. Because here's something I want you to hear from someone who has been doing child advocacy and family law settings for a long time. Most parents, almost universally, I would say, truly love their kids and want their kids to grow up to be as healthy, happy, and whole as possible. Most parents, almost all parents, are not really bad parents. And most parents are not trying to create or foster conflict with their co-parent. But they are overwhelmed and they are often hurt and they are often quite reactive. They have trouble getting past this new dynamic, which is very, very difficult to move from an injured, broken relationship, one that you hoped usually it would last forever and then didn't, and move into a new relationship that involves co-parenting in a really functional way. And children feel that dysfunction even when no one says a word. I've had parents sit in my office and say, my kids are fine. And then I'll meet the kids, or I'll talk to therapists or schools or doctors. And what I will hear and see is that there is a child who's learned to be quiet, careful, or overly mature and is really deeply injured in how that child is actually affected by what parents say and do. So today is not about shame. It is about choice. I'm going to give you today 10 resolutions that you can make and that you can embrace. I'm going to call this not just 10 resolutions, it's really 10 choices that you could make this year that research, experience, and common sense all tell us make a real difference for kids. And good news, I'm not asking you to do all 10, not at all at once. In fact, please don't. I'm just asking you to commit, really commit to one thing that you will do differently this year, even when it's uncomfortable, even when your co-parent doesn't change, even when nobody is overtly celebrating your change. Your kids don't need perfect parents, but they do need regulated ones who have made that pivot to co-parent despite what happened in your relationship. Resolution number 1, I will stop speaking negatively about my co-parent in front of my child. I'm starting here because if I could magically eliminate one thing in families that are splitting up or that are already split up and how they affect their children, this would be it. I cannot tell you how many times I've been on a case or sat in court and heard a parent say or testify, I never talk in a bad way about the other parents, never. And then sometimes minutes later, we'll hear a recording or read a text or see a child interview that tells a very different story. And here's the thing, children don't just hear words, although when you say words that are anti the other parent or divisive, they do hear those, but they also hear tone, they see facial expressions, they notice the size, the eye rolls, the, well, your dad decided comments, or, well, mom won't let you comments. They've told me before, teenagers have, for example, that they have spidey senses about things. And that is definitely true. They can read you. And that's true whether you say words or whether you just make these comments with your body or your eyes or the way that you're gesturing and your emotions. I once worked with a teenager who said to me very plainly, I feel like I have to protect each of my parents from the other. They're always talking to me and making comments about the other parent. That is not a burden that any child should carry. I know what some of you are thinking. Well, what if it's true? What if my child does need to find out and I'm doing my job by making that child understand what a dirtbag the other parent is. That might be true. It might be very true. But your child does not need the truth filtered through adult pain. And it's not your job to do that filtering, that truth telling in that way. When you criticize your co-parent, your child doesn't hear, well, dad messed up. What they ultimately embrace in that message is half of me is a problem. So this year, your resolution might simply be this: I will stop saying negative things out loud with my body, with my gestures, with my eyes, with my sighs, and with my words. You don't have to stop thinking them, although I really wish you would, but you don't have to. You don't have to suddenly be warm and fuzzy, but you need to stop letting them land on your child. I will take care of my own emotional health. Let me be clear about this. Your unprocessed pain, the thing that we talked about at the beginning about that hurt and resentment that you feel when the holidays and the New Year comes around, and you're having disappointment about the way that this family turned out and what is occurring that is far beneath your expectations for what your family was going to look like. That unprocessed pain doesn't disappear. It shows up. It shows up in your reactions, your sarcasm, your rigidity, your anxiety. I've had parents say, I don't have time for therapy. And I will gently say, if they are presenting in that way or any of those ways, you don't have time not to go to therapy. I have people say all the time, well, we can't afford it. And then I look at what they're spending their money on, and it is frankly a lot of things that are not nearly as important as processing this pain that you have had so it does not overflow to your child. So it's true that getting support is very, very important. And if you find you can't possibly meet the resolutions I'm talking about because you're so angry or you're so injured or you're so distrusting that you can't even look this person in the eye at an exchange, then you need to do some work to be able to process this so that you can make that pivot into co-parenting. No matter what has occurred in your marriage or your relationship, you still have to be able to co-parent because you have a child together, and you have to learn how to deal with supporting or engaging with or speaking the name of the other parent in a way that is still good for your child. If that means that you have to go to therapy for that or co-parenting classes, which I will note, my firm is going to be launching a new co-parenting class that is going to be just amazing. And I will promo that to you more in a couple of weeks in January. But if that's what you need, go get that work. It is a far better use of funds than so many other things you spend money on. And I will say it's a far better use of funds than going to court to fight and paying lawyers, because that's a fast path toward poverty, first of all, but also toward not amicable solutions. Sometimes you need to go to court, but most of the time you would be far better off spending money on co-parenting efforts and perhaps divorce coaching, which we talked about last week, and on therapy for yourself so that you can show up. You can actually take this podcast and show it to your therapist and say, I can't do any of these things on these resolutions because I cannot trust this person. I can't deal with this person. I need help moving past it. Please trust me that, like I said, getting support isn't failure. It's very, very positive. And more than that, it is a gift to your child.